The lights in the control room flickered again. This was the third time today. Commander Susan Boyd looked up from her screen with a frown. The main system's display showed more red warnings than green status lights. Not again, she said, tapping the environmental control panel. The numbers there made no sense. According to the readings, the East Dome was both too hot and too cold at the same time. The sensors were failing. Susan ran her hand through her short brown hair and sighed. The colony on planet Epsilon 9 had been her home for 5 years. Earth had promised this would be humanity's shining example of life among the stars. Now it felt more like a forgotten outpost at the edge of nowhere. Chief Mitchell, report to. Control, she said into her COM unit. We've got more system failures. Alan Mitchell arrived a few minutes later. The chief engineer looked as tired as Susan felt. His uniform was stained with the same black fluid that seemed to leak from every pipe and connection in the colony. Let me guess, he said. East Dome environmental controls? Susan nodded. And the water recyclers are showing pressure drops again. Alan pulled up a chair and began working on the main terminal. His fingers moved quickly over the keys, but his eyes showed little hope. Commander, we're running out of parts, he said finally. I've been recycling components from non-essential systems, but there's nothing left to cannibalize. Susan looked around the control room. The 5 other crew members on duty kept their eyes on their own stations. They had all heard this conversation. The supply ship isn't due for another 8 months, Susan said quietly. Alan nodded. We won't last 8 months, not like this. The colony housed 250 people, scientists, engineers, farmers, and their families. They had come to Epsilon 9 to study its unique plant life and mine its rich mineral deposits. Earth needed those minerals. The colony needed Earth support. But the support had grown less frequent with each passing year. How bad is it, really? Susan asked, lowering her voice. Alan looked around to make sure no one was listening too closely. 3 of our 5 atmospheric regulators are failing. If we lose another one, we'll have to abandon the outer domes and crowd everyone into the central hub. And the central hub? Running at 130% capacity already. The life support systems there are overworked. It's only a matter of time. Susan closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she had made her decision. Contact Earth, she said. Emergency channel. Alan's eyes widened. That's only for... I know what it's for, Susan cut him off. This qualifies. 20 minutes later, they were in the communications room. Lily Rodriguez, the communications officer, sat at her station with a worried look. Using the emergency channel meant bypassing normal procedures. It would get attention, but not necessarily the kind they wanted. Are you sure about this, Commander? Lily asked. Do it, Susan said. Lily began the transmission. Sequence. The display showed the powerful signal shooting from their communication array toward Earth. Even at light speed, it would take over 4 years to reach home. They used to have quantum communicators that could send messages instantly, but those had failed 2 years ago. Like everything else in the colony, they had worn out faster than expected in this harsh environment. Message is away, Lily confirmed. Earth will receive it in 4 years, 3 months, and 6 days, Susan nodded. Now they waited. Life in the colony grew harder over the next weeks. Alan and his team worked miracles keeping the essential systems running, but everyone knew they were living on borrowed time. The East Dome had to be evacuated when the atmospheric pressure couldn't be maintained. 67 people moved into the already crowded central hub. Food rations were cut by 15% to account for farming capacity lost in the East Dome. Susan spent her days solving crisis after crisis. At night, she lay awake wondering if she had made the right choice in coming to Epsilon 9. Most of all, she wondered if Earth still cared about its distant children among the stars. 4 months after sending their emergency message, Lily called Susan to the communications room. Commander, we're receiving a signal. It's from Earth. Susan rushed to the comm room. That was impossible. Their message couldn't have reached Earth yet, let alone gotten a response. Are you sure? She asked. Lily nodded. It's on the emergency channel, and it's using old encryption codes. How old? From before we left Earth, Susan felt a chill. Play it. The speakers crackled with static, then cleared. A deep voice filled the room. Colony Epsilon 9. This is Admiral Peter Kelly of Earth Fleet Command. We received your message. Help is on the way. Repeat, help is on the way. ETA to your location. 2 weeks. Prepare for arrival of multiple vessels. Kelly out. The message ended. Susan and Lily stared at each other in confusion. That's impossible, Alan said from the doorway. He had come in during the message. Even if they sent a ship the moment they got our message, it would take years to reach us. And we didn't ask for multiple vessels, Lily added. Just parts and technical support. Susan felt uneasy. Something's not right. This message, it's like they're responding to a different emergency. Could it be for another colony? Alan suggested. Lily shook her head. The encryption is keyed specifically to our colony ID. 2 weeks, Susan said thoughtfully. Whatever this is, we'll know in 2 weeks. The next 14 days were the longest of Susan's life. The colonists debated what the message could mean. Some believed Earth had finally remembered them and was sending proper help. Others feared it was some kind of mistake that would only lead to disappointment. Susan ordered all non-essential power diverted to the long-range sensors. If ships were coming, she wanted as much warning as possible. On the morning of the 14th day, alarms blared throughout the colony. Susan ran to the control room. Multiple objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of our system, reported Jack Winters from the sensor station. Big signatures, really big. How many? Susan asked. Jack looked up, his face pale. 17, Commander. 17. Ships. The main screen showed the objects decelerating as they approached Epsilon 9. They were still too far away for visual identification, but the sensor readings were clear. These were military vessels, warships. What is Earth Fleet Command doing sending warships to fix our atmospheric regulators? Alan whispered. Before Susan could answer, Lily called out from her station. Incoming transmission, Commander. Susan took a deep breath. Put it through. The screen changed to show a man in a crisp fleet uniform with Admiral's insignia. His face was stern, his eyes alert and analyzing everything they saw. Colony Epsilon 9, this is Admiral Peter Kelly aboard. The fleet carrier Constellation. We received your distress call. Prepare for our arrival in 6 hours, and Commander Boyd? Susan swallowed hard. Yes, Admiral? The man's face softened slightly. We brought coffee. Real coffee, as requested. The screen went dark, leaving the control room in stunned silence. Coffee? Alan finally said. We never requested coffee. Susan looked at the fleet of warships approaching their small colony. Something tells me coffee is the least of what they're bringing. The colony buzzed with nervous energy as everyone prepared for the fleet's arrival. Susan ordered all landing pads cleared and the main hangar emptied of equipment. They would need every inch of space for whatever Earth was sending. Do you think they're really bringing coffee? Alan asked as he and Susan walked toward the main hangar. Real coffee? Susan smiled despite her worry. The colony had run out of coffee beans 2 years ago. The synthetic substitute they made from local plants tasted terrible. I'm more concerned about why they sent warships instead of supply vessels, she said. As they reached the hangar, Security Chief Diane Peterson approached them. Her hand rested on her sidearm, something Susan hadn't seen her do in years. Commander, my team is ready, but I don't like this, Diane said. 17 warships for a repair mission? Something isn't right. Susan nodded. Stay alert, but remember these are our people. No weapons drawn unless I give the order. The colony's sensors tracked the approaching ships. The largest vessel, identified as the Constellation, had taken position in orbit above them. The others spread out across the system in a defensive pattern. They're deploying like they expect trouble, Diane observed. Susan's unit beeped. Commander Boyd, this is Admiral Kelly. Request permission to land 3 shuttlecraft at your facility. Permission granted, Admiral. We'll meet you at the main hangar. Susan gathered her senior staff and 20 security officers at the hangar. The massive doors opened to the orange sky of Epsilon 9 in the distance. 3 black dots grew larger as they approached. The shuttles were sleek and military-grade, nothing like the bulky transport ships that usually visited the colony. They landed in perfect formation, their engines barely making a sound. The center shuttle's door opened first. A ramp extended, and down walked 6 soldiers in full combat gear, weapons ready but pointed down. They formed a perimeter around the ramp. Next came Admiral Kelly, followed by more officers and what looked like technical specialists carrying equipment. Susan stepped forward. Admiral Kelly, welcome to Epsilon 9. I'm Commander Boyd. The Admiral was taller in person than he had appeared on the screen. His uniform was spotless, and his eyes missed nothing as they scanned the hangar. Commander Boyd, thank you for the welcome, he said, extending his hand. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but after we received your message, there was no time to waste. Susan shook his hand, confused. Our message? Sir, we sent a routine repair request. Important? Yes, but hardly worth 17 warships. The Admiral's expression changed. He looked at his officers, then back at Susan. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, he said. 10 minutes later, they sat in the colony's conference room. Admiral Kelly had brought his second-in-command, a woman named Grace Williams, and his chief intelligence officer, a serious man called Richard Davis. Susan had Alan, Diane, and Lily with her. Let me understand this, the Admiral said. You sent a message requesting parts for atmospheric regulators and other systems? Yes, Susan replied. 4 months ago on the emergency channel, but the message would have taken over 4 years to reach Earth. There's no way you received it yet. Admiral Kelly and his officers exchanged looks. We didn't receive that message, he said. We received a different emergency transmission from Epsilon 9. It arrived via quantum relay 3 weeks ago. That's impossible, Alan interrupted. Our quantum communicator has been dead for 2 years. The message was sent 6 days ago, Richard Davis said. According to our timestamps. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. What did this message say? Susan finally asked. Admiral Kelly pulled out a datapad and placed it on the table. It reported that Epsilon 9 was under observation by unknown alien vessels. It requested immediate military assistance and included sensor data showing the alien ship's movements. Susan looked at Lily, who shook her head. We sent no such message. There's more, Admiral Kelly continued. The message specifically mentioned that your colony was in critical condition with failing life support systems. It said, and I quote, send repair teams, military support, and for God's sake, real coffee. Susan felt cold. Someone had sent a message in their name, a message that somehow knew about their coffee joke. Show me the sensor data from this message, she said. Richard Davis brought up the files on the room's main screen. What they saw made no sense. The data showed 3 ships of unknown design moving through the outer reaches of their system. But the data was tagged with yesterday's date. We never recorded this, Alan said, studying the information. And our sensors couldn't detect ships that far out even if they were working properly. Commander, Admiral Kelly said gravely, Earth has made first contact with an alien species. They call themselves the Vorn Imperium. Diplomatic relations are ... tense. Susan's heart raced. Aliens? First contact? None of this information had reached their distant colony. 3 weeks ago, the Vorn ambassador informed Earth that they had been observing human expansion into what they consider their territory. Admiral Kelly continued. They named several colonies they had been watching, including Epsilon 9. Are you saying these Vorn sent the message? Diane asked. No, Grace Williams spoke for the first time. The message used proper Earth fleet codes, current codes. But someone wanted us to know you were being watched. Susan tried to make sense of it all. So you brought a fleet because you thought we were under alien surveillance? We brought a fleet because Epsilon 9 is now the front line of a potential conflict. Admiral Kelly corrected. Your colony sits at a strategic location. If the Vorn decide to move against humanity, you would be their first target. Oh, but we're just a mining colony, Susan protested. Admiral Kelly's expression softened slightly. Not anymore. From this moment, Epsilon 9 is being upgraded to a forward operating base. We brought engineers, equipment, and defensive systems to transform this colony. And the coffee? Alan asked weakly. For the first time, Admiral Kelly smiled. 3 tons of it. Real beans from Earth, along with proper food supplies, medical equipment, and everything else a frontline base needs. As if on cue, the conference room door opened. A young officer entered carrying a tray with a steaming pot and cups. Coffee service, Admiral, the officer said. The rich aroma filled the room, bringing tears to Susan's eyes. It smelled like Earth, like home. We have 48 hours to begin the upgrade process, Admiral Kelly said as the coffee was poured. Intelligence suggests the Vorn will send a scout ship to investigate our sudden appearance in this system. Susan took a sip of the hot coffee, its familiar taste a stark contrast to the unfamiliar situation they now faced. So we requested repairs, she said slowly, and you're giving us a military base? You requested help, Admiral Kelly corrected. Earth is finally delivering. The Vorn need to understand that humanity protects its own. All of its own, no matter how distant. Susan looked at her team's worried faces, then back at the Admiral. Where do we start? She asked. Admiral Kelly nodded approvingly. First, we drink this coffee. Then we prepare for company. The next morning, Susan woke to the sound of heavy machinery outside her quarters. She looked out her small window and saw dozens of Earth personnel unloading equipment from shuttles. They worked with purpose and speed. She dressed quickly and made her way to the control room, where Alan was already reviewing plans with Earth engineers. Commander, you need to see this, Alan said, his eyes wide with excitement. He handed her a tablet showing designs for new systems. Susan scrolled through the plans, hardly believing what she saw. These weren't simple repairs. They were complete replacements using technology she had only read about in science journals. These power systems are experimental, she said. I thought they were still in testing on Earth. Not anymore, said a voice behind her. Susan turned to see Grace Williams entering the control room with more Earth engineers. Commander Williams, Susan greeted her. Your people have been busy. Grace nodded. We have 46 hours before our projected first contact with the Vorn scout ship. Every minute counts. Susan followed Grace outside to see the colony's transformation. The main plaza was now a staging area filled with crates, vehicles, and workers. Overhead, shuttlecraft moved between the colony and the orbiting fleet. What exactly are you installing? Susan asked as they walked. Everything, Grace replied. New power systems, advanced life support, sensor arrays that can detect ships at the edge of the system, and defensive systems. Defensive systems? Like weapons? Grace stopped walking and faced Susan directly. Weapons, shields, and more. The Vorn need to see that this colony is not an easy target. They reached a large clearing at the edge of the colony where Earth crews were setting up a massive, circular device. What is that? Susan asked. Planetary shield generator, Grace explained. When activated, it will create an energy barrier around the entire colony. Nothing gets in or out without our permission. Susan watched in amazement as more equipment arrived, and one day Earth had brought more advanced technology to Epsilon 9 than they had seen in 5 years. Why now? She asked quietly. We've been asking for help for years. Grace's expression softened. Politics, bureaucracy, budget constraints, the usual excuses. But the Vorn changed everything. Suddenly, your little colony became strategically vital. So it took an alien threat for Earth to remember us? It shouldn't have, Grace admitted. But now that we're here, we're not leaving you unprotected again. They continued their tour, stopping at the medical facility where Earth doctors were. Installing new equipment, Dr. Paul Wilson, the colony's chief medical officer, looked like a child with new toys. Commander, these diagnostic machines are incredible, he said to Susan. And they brought real medicine, not just the synthetic versions we've been making. Susan smiled, seeing the doctor's excitement. Throughout the colony, she saw the same reaction from her people. Hope was returning to Epsilon 9, even if it came with the shadow of an alien threat. By midday, Susan met with Admiral Kelly in the newly established command center. What had once been a simple control room was now filled with advanced monitoring equipment and staffed by both colony and Earth personnel working side by side. "Your people are adapting quickly," the Admiral noted as they watched the activity. "They're good at making do with what they have," Susan replied. "It's been our way of life here," the Admiral nodded thoughtfully. "The first supply ships with permanent equipment and personnel will arrive next week. Until then, we'll use what we brought with the fleet." "Admiral," Susan began carefully, "what happens after you upgrade our colony? Will Earth remember us this time, or will we be forgotten again until the next crisis?" Admiral Kelly looked at her seriously. "Commander Boyd, I can't speak for all of Earth's politicians and bureaucrats, but I can tell you this: Fleet Command will not abandon Epsilon 9. Again, you are now officially a forward operating base with all the support that entails." Before Susan could respond, an alarm sounded at one of the sensor stations. "Contact," called out Jack Winters, who was working alongside an Earth sensor specialist. "Edge of the system, moving inward slowly." Everyone in the command center tensed. Admiral Kelly moved quickly to the main display. "Show me," he ordered. The screen displayed a small object moving through the outer planets of their system. It was still too far for visual identification, but the new sensors could detect its energy signature. "Vorn design," confirmed the Earth specialist. "Scout class, just as we predicted." Admiral Kelly turned to Susan. "Commander Boyd, this is your colony. How do you want to handle this?" Susan was surprised by the question. She had expected the Admiral to take command. "They're approaching cautiously," she observed. "Let's match their caution. No aggressive moves, but no hiding either." Admiral Kelly smiled slightly. "A diplomatic approach." "I agree," he turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the fleet. Maintain positions, but power up all systems. I want the Vorn to see exactly what they're dealing with." Throughout the colony, the new systems came online. The shield generator hummed as it prepared for activation. Defense turrets rose from newly installed positions around the perimeter. Sensor arrays extended to their full height, scanning in all directions. Susan watched as her small mining colony transformed into a fortress before her eyes. "Will this be enough to deter them?" she asked quietly. "It better be," Grace said from beside her. "Because the alternative is something none of us wants." For the next several hours, they tracked the Vorn scout ship as it moved closer to Epsilon 9. It maintained a cautious distance, obviously scanning the colony and the Earth fleet. "They're surprised," Admiral Kelly said, watching the ship's movements. "They expected to find a vulnerable outpost, not a defended position with a fleet." "They're sending a transmission," announced Lily from her upgraded communications station. Everyone in the command center fell silent. "Put it through," Susan said. The main screen changed to show a humanoid figure with pale blue-gray skin and ridged features. Its eyes were large and entirely black. When it spoke, its mouth moved strangely, but the words came through clearly in English. "Human settlement," the alien said. "I am Observer Kral of the Vorn Imperium. Your sudden military presence in this sector is noted with concern. Explain your purpose." Admiral Kelly stepped forward, but gestured for Susan to join him. "This is Admiral Kelly of Earth Fleet Command and Commander Boyd of Colony Epsilon 9. We are conducting routine upgrades to ensure the safety and prosperity of our established settlement. The Vorn Imperium was informed of our colony's existence when it was founded 5 years ago." The alien's black eyes blinked slowly. "Your routine upgrades include significant weaponry and a battle fleet. The Imperium views this as a potential act of aggression." Susan spoke before Kelly could respond. "Observer Kral, our colony has struggled with failing systems for years. Earth has finally sent the help we requested. We seek no conflict with the Vorn Imperium." The alien studied her for a long moment. "We will be watching, Commander Boyd. The Imperium does not tolerate military expansion near our territories. The transmission ended abruptly. Well, Admiral, Kelly said, that could have gone worse. What happens now? Susan asked. Now we finish what we started, the Admiral replied, and we prepare for their return. Because they will return, Commander, and next time they'll bring more than a scout ship. Susan looked around at her transformed colony, at Earth's fleet in orbit, and at her people working alongside Earth personnel. Then we'll be ready, she said. A week passed. The Vorn scout ship had left the system, but everyone at Epsilon 9 knew they would return. Work continued day and night as more ships arrived from Earth bringing supplies, equipment, and people. The small colony of 250 had grown to over 800 with the addition of military personnel and technical specialists. Susan sat in her new office, reviewing reports on a sleek terminal that had replaced her old, failing equipment. Everything in the colony was being upgraded or replaced. The air smelled fresher, the lights no longer flickered. And everywhere, people moved with new purpose. Alan entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee was now available throughout the colony, and no one took it for granted. The new power core is online, he reported, handing Susan a cup. We're generating 5 times more power than before, and it's stable. Susan nodded, taking a sip of the rich, dark liquid. How are our people handling all the changes? Mostly positive, Alan replied. Some are worried about becoming a military target, but everyone appreciates having working systems again. A soft chime sounded, and Grace Williams appeared on Susan's screen. Commander Boyd, Admiral Kelly requests your presence in the command center. Our sensors have detected something. Susan and Alan hurried to the command center. The large, circular room was buzzing with activity. Admiral Kelly stood at the central display, studying a star map with several officers. Commander Boyd, he greeted her, we have visitors. The display showed 3 ships entering the outer system. Unlike the small scout from before, these were larger vessels. Vorn warships? Susan asked. Yes, Admiral Kelly confirmed. A cruiser and 2 escort vessels. They're making no attempt to hide their approach. Susan studied the display. They're coming in slower than the scout did. More cautious, or more deliberate, Grace added. They want us to see them coming. Admiral Kelly turned to his communications officer. Alert the fleet. Move to defensive formation Alpha. No aggressive actions, but I want all systems ready. Susan watched as the Earth ships in orbit repositioned themselves. Over the past week, more vessels had arrived, bringing the fleet to 23 ships. Commander, Admiral Kelly said to Susan, I'd like you to join me for this conversation with the Vorn. They've seen you before, and continuity might help keep things diplomatic. Susan nodded, though she felt nervous. She was a colony administrator, not a diplomat negotiating with alien species. Hours passed as they tracked the approaching Vorn ships. The command center remained tense but professional. Earth's military personnel had trained for this moment, even if the colonists hadn't. They're entering standard orbit, reported the sensor officer, holding position at 10,000 kilometers. They're sending a transmission, Lily announced from her station. Admiral Kelly straightened his uniform. On screen, the main display changed to show a Vorn similar to Observer Krau, but with more elaborate ridges on its face and clothing that suggested higher rank. I am Commander Trath of the Vorn Imperium vessel Dominant Will, the alien said. Its voice was deeper than Krau's had been. I come under orders from the High Command to assess the human military buildup in this sector. Admiral Kelly stepped forward. Admiral Peter Kelly of Earth Fleet Command and Commander Susan Boyd of Epsilon 9, we welcome peaceful communication with the Vorn Imperium. The alien's black eyes shifted between them. Your colony has transformed from a mining outpost to a military installation in mere days. The Imperium views this as a provocative act. We are simply supporting our colony with needed infrastructure, Admiral Kelly replied smoothly. EPS-IL-09 is a legitimate human settlement, established with proper notification to all known spacefaring species. Yet now it bristles with weapons, Commander Trath said. Our scans detect defensive systems far beyond what a mining colony requires. Susan decided to speak. Commander Trath, until recently our colony struggled with failing systems. Earth has finally provided the support we requested. Our primary goal remains peaceful development of this world. The Vorn commander studied her. The Imperium has observed your colony for some time, Commander Boyd. We know of your struggles. What we question is why Earth suddenly decided to fortify this position with such overwhelming force. Susan felt a chill. The Vorn had been watching them all along, seeing their hardships, their isolation. She glanced at Admiral Kelly, who gave her a small nod to continue. Perhaps, Susan said carefully, Earth recognized that leaving distant colonies vulnerable was no longer acceptable, especially when those colonies might have neighbors who observed their struggles without offering assistance. The Vorn's ridges darkened slightly, a reaction Susan couldn't interpret. A pointed observation, Commander Trath said. Yet it does not explain why Earth chose a military response rather than a civilian one. Admiral Kelly stepped in. Commander Trath, Earth protects its citizens, all of its citizens. The form that protection takes is our decision to make. The Vorn commander was silent for a moment. I request permission to send a delegation to your colony to verify your peaceful intentions. Susan and Admiral Kelly exchanged glances. This was unexpected. We would welcome a small delegation, Susan said before the Admiral could respond. As a gesture of good faith, Admiral Kelly looked surprised but didn't contradict her. Very well, Commander Trath said. Prepare to receive 3 representatives in 6 hours. Dominant will out. The screen returned to the sensor display of the Vorn ships. A delegation? Admiral Kelly asked Susan. That's a bold move, Commander. If they're coming to our colony, they'll see we're not just a military base, Susan explained. They'll see families, scientists, farmers. They'll see we're building a home here, not just a fortress. The Admiral considered this, then nodded slowly. Smart, very smart, but also risky. 6 hours later, Susan, Admiral Kelly, and a small reception team waited at the main landing pad. A sleek, angular shuttle descended from the Vorn cruiser. It landed silently, its surface shimmering with an iridescent blue-gray color that matched the Vorn skin. The shuttle's door opened, and 3 Vorn emerged. Commander Trath was instantly recognizable by his elaborate facial ridges. He was accompanied by 2 others with simpler markings. Commander Trath, Susan greeted them. Welcome to Epsilon 9, the Vorn commander looked around, taking in the busy colony. Workers were everywhere, installing equipment and building new structures. But there were also children playing in a newly replanted garden area nearby, and scientists collecting samples from local plants. Your colony is not what I expected, Trath admitted. What did you expect? Susan asked. Weapons, soldiers, not us. He gestured toward the children. Susan smiled slightly. We have those too. But this is our home, Commander Trath. We're building a future here, not just a defensive position. For the next 2 hours, they showed the Vorn delegation around the colony. The aliens observed everything with intense curiosity, asking detailed questions about Earth technology and colony operations. In the hydroponic gardens. Now thriving with new equipment, Trath paused to examine a coffee plant that had been brought. From Earth? This plant is important to humans? He asked, noting how carefully it was tended. Susan smiled. Very important. It's one of the first things Earth sent when they responded to our request for help. Before the weapons? Trath asked. Along with them, Susan replied. Because they understood we needed both to survive out here. Protection and a taste of home. Trath studied her with those unreadable black eyes. Perhaps humans are more complex than our reports suggested. 1 month had passed since the Vorn delegation visited Epsilon 9. The colony had continued to grow and change. New buildings rose from the rocky ground. The once struggling outpost now hummed with energy and purpose. Earth had kept its promise, sending regular supply ships and more personnel. Susan stood at the window of her office, watching a group of children playing in the new recreation area. Some were colony children, others had come with Earth families assigned to the base. They played together without caring about where each had come from. Alan entered, carrying a datapad. The last of the atmospheric regulators is online, he reported. All 5 domes are now at optimal levels, Susan smiled. Remember when we were happy if the air was just breathable? Those days seem very far away now, Alan agreed. A soft chime from Susan's desk announced an incoming call. Admiral Kelly's face appeared on the screen when she answered. Commander Boyd, our long-range sensors have detected a large group of ships entering the system, he said, his expression serious. Vorn signatures, but many more than before. Susan felt her heart race. How many? 12 vessels, including what appears to be a dreadnought class. They'll reach our position in 6 hours. I'll meet you in the command center, Susan said. Ending the call, the command center was alert but calm when Susan arrived. Earth's military personnel moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for whatever might come. Display the approaching fleet, Admiral Kelly ordered. The main screen showed the Vorn ships moving in tight formation. At the center was a massive vessel easily 3 times the size of Earth's largest ship. That's the Dreadnought, Grace Williams explained. The flagship of the Vorn High Command? Why would they send their flagship? Susan asked. To make a statement, Admiral Kelly said grimly. Or to start a war, Susan studied the display. Have they sent any messages? Not yet, Lily replied from her station. But they know we can see them. Admiral Kelly turned to his fleet communications. Officer, alert all ships. Battle stations, but weapons cold. I want to be ready, but we don't fire first. For the next several hours, the colony prepared. Civilians moved to the central hub where the shields were strongest. Military personnel took their positions. The planetary shield powered up, creating a visible dome over the entire colony. Susan stood beside Admiral Kelly as they watched the Vorn fleet approach. Earth's ships had formed a protective barrier between the alien vessels and Epsilon 9. They're entering standard orbit, reported the sensor officer. Holding position. Incoming transmission, Lily announced. It's single quotes S. Different, multiple signals combined. Put it through, Admiral Kelly ordered. The screen changed to show 3 Vorn. In the center was Commander Trath, now wearing more elaborate clothing. To his left was a female Vorn with intricate facial patterns. To his right was an elderly Vorn with pale ridges and deep-set black eyes. Admiral Kelly, Commander Boyd, Trath greeted them. I present High Commander Vex of the Vorn Imperial Fleet and Science Director Mera of the Imperial Advisory. Susan and the Admiral bowed slightly in respect. The elderly Vorn High Commander Vex spoke in a raspy voice. Your colony has drawn the attention of our highest authorities. This is unusual. We hope it's for positive reasons, Susan replied carefully. Science Director Myra leaned forward. Commander Trath's report was most interesting. He described a human outpost that was both military base and home. A contradiction to our understanding of your species. Admiral Kelly kept his expression neutral. Humans are complex, Director. We protect what we value, and we value our homes above all. High Commander Vex studied them with ancient eyes. For many cycles, the Imperium has observed human expansion. We saw your slow, disorganized spread among the stars. We noted how you abandoned distant colonies, leaving them to struggle. Susan tensed at these words, knowing they were true. We believed, Vex continued, that humans were divided, weak, that you lacked the unity to be a true power in this region of space. And now? Admiral Kelly asked. Now we see differently, Vex replied. When a small distant colony sent a simple request, your Earth responded with overwhelming force. You did not abandon your people. You protected them, supplied them, and transformed their outpost into a fortress in mere days. It was always our intention to support our colonies, Admiral Kelly said. Sometimes it takes a reminder of what's important. Vex made a gesture Susan didn't understand. The Vorn Imperium has existed for 10,000 years because we recognized potential threats early. We watch, we assess, and we decide. The command center grew tense at these words. Susan noticed Earth officers subtly moving to their stations. "And what have you decided about humans?" Susan asked directly. Surprisingly, it was Science Director Myra who answered, "That you are not what we thought." Commander Trath shared an interesting observation about your coffee plants. Susan blinked in surprise. Coffee plants? Yes. Myra continued. He noted that your Earth sent these plants along with weapons, that you consider both necessary for survival. This is a perspective the Vorn had not considered. High Commander Vex raised a hand. The Imperium has reviewed all data regarding human expansion and your response to Epsilon 9's request. We have determined that humans are not the disorganized species we first believed. Susan and Admiral Kelly exchanged glances, uncertain where this was leading. Instead, Vex continued, we recognize that humans possess a quality the Vorn respect, loyalty to your distant kin. You do not abandon your people, even across vast distances. No, Susan said firmly. We don't. Vex nodded slowly. Therefore, the Vorn Imperium extends formal recognition to all human colonies in this sector, including Epsilon 9. We propose a treaty of non-interference and established borders. The command center erupted in whispers. Admiral Kelly stepped forward. The Vorn Imperium's recognition is appreciated, he said diplomatically. Earth would welcome formal relations between our peoples. The meeting continued for another hour as initial terms were discussed. When the transmission finally ended, a cheer went up from the Earth personnel. They backed down, Grace said with a relieved smile. All because we showed up when a small colony asked for help. Admiral Kelly shook his head. They didn't back down. They reassessed. There's a difference, he turned to Susan. Your colony's request may have prevented a war, Commander Boyd. Later that evening, Susan sat with Alan, Lily, and Diane in the colony's new cafeteria. Each held a cup of real coffee as they watched. Earth and colony personnel celebrating together. To think, Diane said, all this started because we needed some spare parts. And coffee, Alan added with a smile. Don't forget the coffee, Susan looked around at her transformed colony. What had once been a struggling outpost was now a thriving community and an important diplomatic location. Earthships orbited protectively. Overhead, and for the first time in years, the future looked bright. I guess sometimes you have to ask for exactly what you need, she said, raising her cup. Repairs, coffee, and a fleet. The others laughed and raised their cups too. To asking for what you need, Lily said. And getting more than you expected? Susan finished, outside the windows of the cafeteria. The lights of Earthships shone like new stars in Epsilon 9's night sky, a constant reminder that no matter how distant the colony, they were not alone, not anymore.